Go True, that was a $2 million campaign launched by Susana Martinez, only to have it hijacked on the internet, like I think it was Facebook, New Mexico True, as it's written, because they failed to secure a Facebook page. But they were quick to give that sole source contract to outsiders from Texas. So I suppose my point is that there's no shortage of corruption in New Mexico. And you can just, yeah, they're all in New Mexico True. And you can go further. So if you go to New Mexico True on Facebook, you'll find all of these memes that are very true to New Mexico. I like to consider myself true to New Mexico, not New Mexico True. Because if we stay along that dangerous path, well, for sure we're all doomed. I don't think that we'll need the nuclear bomb for that. But there is an overwhelming and extreme poverty conditions in New Mexico, and this ridiculous loyalty from New Mexicans and politicians. So like if there's, let's say, Peggy Aragon or some other politician, everyone's like, their family's good. Their dad was real good to New Mexico, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is that they're not. We're just stupidly loyal to these people, and I don't know why. Peggy Aragon, speaking of calling people accountable from the smallest type of election, like the school board, Peggy Aragon was voted into the Albuquerque public school systems, but she was funded by Republican money with this massive flyering and phone calls or phone bots during her campaign when it's a nonpartisan. Like, that's a little ridiculous. Like, why do we have that? Well, because it's a shakedown, most likely. So when I'm trying to identify corruption, I always look for the ripoff. If you find the ripoff, you could find the tyrant, and then whoever they're connected to, that's a ripoff. That's who's ripping you off. So for instance, like Taser International, yeah. Oh, okay, well, we'll just start with this one. Yeah, no. And then you can just actually just keep going really fast. There you go. And so Taser International, it was $2 million for beta products that the Albuquerque Police Department purchased with taxpayer money, and then Chief Ray Schultz quit on the day that they awarded $10 million for a wrongful death suit to Ken Ellis III, and only to find out they were beta products. Why did we have them? So DOJ comes out with their police a reform or findings letter, and then all of a sudden the mayor's like on board, even though he vetoed City Council's initial attempt to try and even get the DOJ here, and he's going to try and act like a hero, and he's going to go to the roundhouse, he's going to say he saved Albuquerque, he's going to say he saved it on your backs, and the backs of the police department and everybody else, and not to mention the victims, who some of them called the police themselves for help, and were shot. So Mayor Barry hires Scott Greenwood for $70,000 initially, because that's the threshold where you don't need city council approval. So there's a ripoff. Why is Scott Greenwood getting a sole source contract? He also worked for Taser International. That's sort of a conflict of interest, but nobody was talking about that. Then Scott Greenwood, off the backs of Albuquerque, was purchasing $53 steaks, staying at Hotel Andalus for $350 a night, plus a dog deposit. So we had to pay for his dog too. Meanwhile, I'm like 2 blocks over, camping, right, in protest with Albuquerque's Unsheltered. And there's a boy in a tent trying to kick heroin, and he's crying, and he's praying, and all he wants to do is shove another needle up his arm. Because, like, without heroin, you die. We come up with a million reasons why he initially stuck it up his arm, but the fact is he needed heroin. So he's crying, and the whole tent is a mess. And finally, it's about 5 o'clock in the morning. He says, I just can't do it, I'm sorry. He gets up and he leaves, and he comes back and he's high. Saw him the other day, a year later, he's still high. Because there's no resources, but we have money for nuclear weapons. So we have the highest nuclear or military grade equipment here with our police, because because we get them through grants. So I have a feeling that they're always using them so that we keep getting them. Because if we don't use them, then we don't need them. But the Albuquerque Police Department definitely makes good use of that. And so currently in our long list of struggles is the ART program, or the Albuquerque Rapid Transit, or Albuquerque Rapid Ripoff, whichever you'd like to refer to as, yeah, and then we can back out of there or close it.
That was it?
Yeah, and then we can, I got another file, yeah.
Another file, okay.
And then, let me go back one.
Oops. Social media music.
No, social media. And then, you go. And so, that there is Albuquerque Rapid Transit, and it's a mayor's project. They've all said it, it's a mayor's project. So even in their initial filing for the $69 million in grants, even though taxpayers are gonna have to pick up another, basically half, because it's 119 million, and they said that's the total price. It wasn't the total price, because we got West Central all dug up because they had to replace all of the water pipes, which wasn't included in that $1.19 million. But it's free money, they keep saying, but we got $69 free. Well, it's not free, it's taxpayer money. It's off our backs. It's really easy to spend a lot of money when it's not yours and you're just like doling it out, And so that's Mayor Berry and City Council. The only thing they had to say about the art program was how they didn't like that cover of the Albuquerque Free Press. How they didn't like the way they were being portrayed. And I was like, that's interesting. So we tack up Central to try and let people know, hey, it's a rapid ripoff, right? All struggles are the same because they all lead back to corrupt government. All of them are responsible for the conditions in which we live in. We didn't do it, we're just living through it. It's like we didn't start the fire, man. We just trying to get out from under it. So Santa Lina was another dirty deal. It was a ridiculous amount of land west of Paseo del Bocon, which is now Atrisco, and it was basically given to the people from Barclays, right? So they come here and they give it some cool name like Santa Lina, right? Sounds all New Mexican, where I want to live in Santa Lina, right? But we don't have enough water to sustain them. We don't have roads to sustain them, right? We don't have the infrastructure, the schools, nothing. So I said, well, development that big, because it's the master plan, who's going to come here? So, okay, fine, they got the land, but are they really going to develop it or what? Because, we are statistically known #1 in the nation for people leaving the state, not migrating here or coming here, but they're leaving. They don't want nothing to do with New Mexico. New Mexico dead last by design. Schools suck. Jobs, there's no jobs. Jobs are leaving. Jobs are gone. You lucky if you get a McDonald's job, and then people are going to say for you to be happy that you got that McDonald's job, right? And so possibly if all of this energy is happening around like nuclear weapons, it's possible that could be the next site, because who else is going to move there? And the whole art could just be like the gateway into it, so that they have access to the playground, which is only Nob Hill and Old Town, or not Old Town, downtown, right? Because if we really wanted a rapid transit system that was economically thriving, we would have had main arteries coming from all sectors of the city, pulling them towards Central, which has the best route already. Now, that's really like a far stretch, because I'm basing that on nothing, but what I do know is that everything that we have brought forward at any single time, we have rarely been wrong, and we have not been off, because it's always a ripoff. Like, something is happening with the art. UNM is highly invested in the art, like highly invested. They practically make the president here at UNM a hooker. He's so into the art, And then you say, well, I'm against art, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, you don't like art? What kind of person are you? Well, I like art, I just don't like the art of war. And I don't like our land being ripped off either. Like, how much do we have to endure, before we even just say no? Like, we can start by just saying no. Stop pillaging us, stop taking our stuff. Robert Perry, this is another name you might want to, store somewhere. He's the second in command of Albuquerque City. He is a top 5% earner, an American earner. And New Mexicans barely make like maybe 33,000 on average, 2-income household, dead last by design. But this man gives himself raises, right, public money, and he puts himself in the top 5% of American earners. He's the #1 city employee paid. And the list goes on and on. Diana Duran, she steals campaign funds, and she has politicians going over the, into court defending her and saying, well, she didn't steal taxpayer money. Those were campaign contributions. Yeah, they were. But her office sort of in charge of like, campaign funds, or am I wrong? Or am I wrong? So we went to the courthouse and we start playing, is it craps with the dice and money on the floor? We start bouncing it off of the courthouse, right? The wall outside. And I'm like, well, why not? Gambling is illegal, but who cares? I mean, who cares? Cops shoot people in the back, politicians pillage everything we got, our schools. The whole park debacle it's insane. They didn't even have a mechanism to grade those tests because Scandera, who's the Secretary of Education, was, creating it. And I said, for all their millions of dollars, you would have thought it would have came with like, I don't know, an answer sheet, so that we can grade it. But I went to public school too, so, in Albuquerque, so maybe I'm just not that smart, I don't know. But it's a shakedown all the time, that much I do know. New Mexico is dead last by design. And then, let's come and close this. Yeah. And then these ones you can just like burn through. And this will just,
Okay, see that?
yeah, just keep like going like that so they can just see them. So the gateway, Dan Lewis. So he comes out with this ridiculous quote, and he's like, the protesters were scary, they were violent, and people around them were scared. There's Trump. Over here, Dan Lewis, look at him, looking cool. And then this is another photo of him laughing when they were bringing Javier down, who was violent and known for violence. I mean, Javier, I wish I could get him hopped up, to start, getting crazy in the street, but you can't hop him up. He's from SWAP, Southwest Organizing Project, and he's a good man. And he started getting death threats, and they have kids, and he has a wife, and when they go out, people recognize him, and they start taunting him, all because of what he said. And yet, New Mexico, true, that's Barry's affordable housing right there. Those are basket carts rolling around the city. Every time you see one of those carts, know that is affordable housing, because there's none. This was our action yesterday. It was really good. And Trish, their event isn't here tonight or today, correct? They moved it?
No, it's at Crown Plaza at 1:30.
No.
What? The event downstairs, yes, it's all at the Crown Plaza Hotel.
Right,
because
so-
we scared the hell out of
And
them.
here's somebody sort of just smirking at us. But they were such afraid of a little bit of people that they moved their event from here to the Crown Plaza. So they're not here today, even though it was supposed to be like our event and their event, and it was a counter. For $250 makes it, one, unaffordable for people. It's not transparent, and it's not a public event, period. Transparency, secrecy is the exception where the public's right to know is the standard, but not everybody follows the rules. As Berkeley Media, we have one of the largest, the second largest lawsuits against the city of Albuquerque for records. We don't want any money, what we want is a record. And if they fail to produce the record, then we know that they destroyed it, because a portion of it was previously released to mainstream media, but just not to us. So they destroy records. They continue to do all of these things because they can, and because nobody holds them accountable. I've seen them make up words, because they go to city council all the time foolishly, and all you hear is like respect the decorum. They don't want you to get upset. They want you to go over there real prim and proper and be like with the petition. At some point, petitions aren't going to work. At some point, letter writing isn't going to work, although that is a really good idea, and we would be willing to host something like that with our space. But at some point, we all got to go, to our government offices and demand that somebody be held accountable. Police violate people's rights all the time, poor people. And then they come out on the news and say, well, they didn't have to show us what was in their pockets, because they were looking for some stuff that was stolen from their fire trucks. But it's like, well, what you gonna do with all them rights in that dark alley? You're gonna comply, no matter what rights you know. And so it's important that as New Mexicans, specifically here, that we're aware of, of the poverty, because that condition is created on purpose, right? To keep people at like this sort of sub-level, barely getting enough, if that, and then becoming homeless. And yeah, there's that kind of homelessness, but what I've been seeing is a lot more youth and families. And then day 3, when I was occupying 10 cities, I looked homeless. I had a backpack, couldn't go into a single store, couldn't use the restroom anywhere, because you go in because it's customers only, or and then people talk to you really slow, and like you're stupid all of a sudden, because you're a little dirty and have a backpack. And then some lady was trying to give me $1, and I was like, no, I'm good, I don't need your $1, I didn't ask for $1. She's like, take the $1, look at yourself. Okay. And this is one little encampment across from a service provider, Father Rusky. This man is in the top 15% of American earners. He gives himself $8,000 raises every year consistently. For the past 3 years, he hasn't filed last 2, or at least they're not online. And they're available online because he's a public entity that's publicly funded. He gives himself $8,000 raises. He makes $130-some thousand a year in the name of poverty with the collar. I'm not okay with that at all.
Who is he?
Father Rusky from St. Martin's. He and usually when the mayor's coming out with some sort of program, that was me panhandling while I eating pizza in spirit of Susana Martinez. He's typically always next to the mayor when he's coming out with heading home or whatever other program he has. And these pictures are interesting, and I'll go back to that. There's a police officer in this lineup, and I marched with him for a little bit, and we were both saying no justice, no peace. In fact, he's right here. This guy right here. He's a cop, he's a cop, he's a cop, he's a cop. So we're like, no justice, no peace, but they looked a little odd because they were the only ones constantly keeping track of where the cameras were, even though we had 5 or 6, all the pictures sort of looked the same. So I go and I march with them, and we're like, no justice, no peace, and he's just, sort of fooling around like that. And then he says, no justice, no peace. And I said, exactly. And I said, I asked him if he was carrying. And he was like, well, do what you gotta do and we'll find out. And I said, all right, just wanna make sure I was talking to the right people. And then in a later photo, that's a spy plane, and it's owned and operated by Albuquerque, the city of Albuquerque. The Journal already came out and said that they were using it to conduct surveillance at every stoplight. Those are all integrated to the RTCC, which is the Real-Time Crime Center. But all of these cameras and stuff are to keep you safe, but never, not once have we heard on the news, in order to keep you safe, there was a drunk driver, he hit so-and-so, and we were able to track them from these cameras that we put up there with your money for your safety. That never happens. Those things right there, they're like command posts, and they go up and they look like guard towers. We have those are very expensive things, and cameras everywhere. I mean, a ridiculous amount of cameras, and then they get offended. Okay, so this guy right here, those two were in the lineup. I seen them take this guy right here out of handcuffs. It was at a McDonald's after they had already shot Officer Grant 8 times in every single vital organs except his heart. He barely lived. City just settled with them for $6 million. And his lieutenant, if you saw the video online, there's no shortage of it. He's like, I'm sorry, I thought you were the monster. I thought you were the bad guy. And I was just like, bad guy? So that was him in the other picture, the big beard. His beard's a little longer, but that's the one I marched with. No justice, no peace. But he knew what he was doing. I knew what I was doing. But I wasn't infiltrating, right? He was, even though there was police officers at every block taking note of what was happening. So why did he have to do that if not trying to infiltrate? Because there was no shortage of uniformed police officers. These people here, they killed Jonathan Sorensen at Kmart, lost prevention, and the news said that he suffered a medical episode. And out of their mouth, she's a co-conspirator, said, well, he shouldn't have been shoplifting. And I said, so we kill him, so we sit on a man, 3 of them sit on a man until he's not breathing. They suffocated him. And then they're gonna say, well, he was resisting arrest. But you're under no authority to resist arrest. You're a loss prevention person. That's what you are. You're tasked with, like, you're a glorified witness. That's all you're supposed to do. The power of social media over here, I think this was one of them.
Oops.
This is propaganda we made, just not yellow propaganda. And so anyway, so we've gone up to 1 million views on some of our stuff, and that's the power of social media. Our forum, our site is open to anybody if you wanted to submit any kind of media, video, writing, poetry, whatever, all ages, all genre. The Albuquerque Journal is funded by the city of Albuquerque. They're on the top list as far as payment, like accounts payable. So sometimes the journal has to, or we have to pay the journal for like lawsuits or those, you know, those types of notices that you're mandated to put in the paper. But from 2010 to current, it went from $200,000, just under like 198, blah, 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 to over $2 million. So the reality is the Albuquerque Journal does not need you, does not need me, doesn't need its readers. They're funded by our tax dollars, period. And $1 for their paper, $2 on the weekend is just, it's a ridiculous price to pay for, you know, such a rag. I mean, it really is. At some point, we're gonna have to boycott them, right? We're gonna have to boycott them and be like, you're not doing your job. It's not about what side you're on, it's about reporting the facts, you know? But often they like to say, well, you're not a real journalist, you printed this. Yeah, I printed this, but so did you. So did you. And so it's always that, right? Or we post a lot of raw footage, but people want that. People want to see behind the scenes and what's going on. You know, as media, we got into the Trump rally. So it was like CNN, NBC, MN, whatever, nightly news, whatever. And then Burke Media, but they didn't even make us a sheet like they did to them. So I got my Sharpie and I wrote Burke Media and like that, because I had gum in my mouth and I slapped it to the floor. You know, and I stood there with my cracked iPhone and my camera. Because I was there and I was going to be there, just like them, you know? And so it matters that we tell our own stories because we have a counter to what they say, to what they do. We're on record of saying no, you know, so I ask that you, and we're funded by nobody, so we don't get paid, we're not paid protesters or journalists or whatever with printed badges. And then we also give badges out, like if you need it for an event, we could sign you up for it as media, and then we give you like a 48-hour, 72-hour badge or whatever. And then you get to go be media for the day. Yeah, it's kind of cool. So anyways, Santa Lena, keep an eye on it and keep an eye on art. Like, they're all dirty deals. Always look for the ripoff because it's coming. They're plotting right now against us. They're always plotting and smiling in their seats. We don't have to be united in everything, but we need to be in solidarity. We have a main goal, and that's corruption. What is spoiled cannot be unspoiled. It must be destroyed. There's no reform. It's spoiled beyond like repair. Mayor Barry and all of his administration, Susana Martinez, why they are still in office and we have not like went Pueblo revolt remix is beyond me. I'm ready. If you ready, I'm ready. And as far as the skies go, I'm glad you brought it up first because I always feel crazy when I do. And I try not to look up anymore because my mom's always all, stop looking in the sky, you look crazy. People are gonna think you're crazy. It's always what people think of us, right? Maybe I am a little crazy, but I've seen some funny stuff in the sky too, like things, you know, like my mom was like, no, that's a plane. I'm like, it's not a plane, look the way it's traveling. And then it hovers and then reverses. I said, you ever seen a plane do that, Mom? And she was all, well, maybe it's one of the little drones. So we bought some drones too, right? Those were those drones you saw. And they record, and so we fly them over like police scenes and stuff, which they don't like. And they always ask us, where's your pilot licenses? We don't have one. Well, you can't fly it. No, those were guidelines. See, even the police don't know the law. Have them coach you the law, have them produce the law. Produce it. Or get out of my way, you know? Because we're gonna fly those drones. I don't like drones, but it's just a counter, you know? Two wrongs don't make a right, but they certainly don't like it, and that's always pleasurable. So again, thank you guys for being here. It's important that you are. And the mountain we still must climb. Hopefully it's the one that, you know, we climb to unite, or, you know, because there's not a match big enough to burn it down. So, thank you.